Hi and welcome to the Great Intentions Podcast, episode 22 with Roel Wouters and myself, Jonas Lund.
Yeah, the super nice dissonant at the end of our intro. Yeah, I can't get enough of that.
It's pretty good. How are you, Roel Wouters?
I'm pretty good, Jonas Lund. Yeah.
Okay, good.
And how about
Yeah.
yourself?
I'm good. We are in Sweden for Christmas. It is nice. Shortly, now it's the calm before the storm, because in a couple of hours, my little sister with her 3 kids will arrive. And the one kid is 3, and the 2 other kids are 1, and they are twins. So it's a bit of a madhouse. It will become a madhouse, I think. But that's nice.
And how
It's
long
Christmas.
will the madhouse last?
1 week. Yeah.
Okay. I mean, maybe that's also nice. So it's not that everything has to be like happening in this one evening, right? You have like a little bit more time, so you can also like choose not to engage for a bit every now and then. Or is that difficult?
Completely. Yeah, completely. Yeah. And also the real benefit is that where my parents place in Sweden, and they have on top of the garage is like a decorated loft, kind of separate from the main house. That's where we're staying, so we can always escape to the loft.
That's
for
nice.
Peace and quiet. Yeah, it's really
Okay.
good. Yeah.
So you
So
can
that's
retract,
really nice.
But it's also weird if you're like there for days. Then also everybody will like start be curious, like, hey.
Then my mom is gonna be like, yeah, but why aren't you never in the main house? And then the negotiation was that my parents wanted to stay there because all the other kids will be upstairs, so it will be difficult to sleep. So the agreement we made now is when they become miserable from not sleeping in the night, we can change.
Okay.
Because if my parents are miserable from lack of sleep, everyone is miserable.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's like in everybody's interest that they are at least well rested.
Exactly. Yeah, for sure. This is to optimize the family dynamic. We need to have well rested grandparents. Otherwise, it's like impossible.
I think this is another example of. Yeah. This feels to me as another example of a young parent, a young father that always has to be like very like sensible and sensitive about like what is the best optimization, what's the best situation for the whole. And then sometimes you feel, I remember this, that you forget, and you also have to sort of not all the time think of yourself as a victim of all these dynamics and be like also right. I mean, I remember that
the typical would be that you optimize. I think the typical would be that you optimize for the total happiness, like the combined happiness of everybody. And through that, you forget about your own entirely, because that's the easiest thing to like optimize away. Yeah. Because if you like don't prioritize your own needs, that's okay, because as long as everybody's happy, it's fine. This is a typical middle child dynamic, by the way. Like this is what you message, maintain peace in the household, which is
you're a middle.
I'm a middle child, the messenger. So yeah, it's the best, supposedly. Yeah.
Are you aligned your parental vision? Are you aligned with your sisters? Maybe this is, I don't know if you want to talk about this, but I'm very interested like in this kind of, is there like big differences?
I think there is a difference. Yes, there is. I mean, first off, they wanted a second child, and then she found out she was pregnant with twins and became totally shocked, because that's not at all what they had planned. So, and I think it's very tough to have twins when you already have a toddler, because then it's just like your life is just like, it's basically double everything, which is mental. So I think there is like, there is no room for me to judge anything or what they do, because I have no idea what that's like. But I do know that
different vision doesn't necessarily. Different vision doesn't necessarily mean that you judge it, right? You can also have have a different vision, but then not I mean, you can
That's
still
true.
like support somebody else's vision or ideas.
That is absolutely true. To be honest, I don't know so much because we haven't spent so much time together. But I do
So
know
that will
that
be
there's a
interesting.
difference in terms of screen time, for sure. But that will be my solution to this was that I wanted to promote a phone-free Christmas,
That
and
is
then I
such a
said
great idea.
I wanted to suggest that anybody who breaks it has to change all the kids' nappies for half a day. So sort of, that's a motivator, you know. But
yeah, it's a great idea. It's also like, it's also like putting an extra amount of stress of family dynamics, like also for yourself and your partner and everybody, like saying like, oh, we don't have any phones. That also means
exactly. I mean, it would be nice, but because my family is quite addicted to their phones, so
who isn't?
That will be I mean, yeah, for sure. But I think I'm the one who uses my phone the least in this household, so I win.
That's a good feeling for a young father, right?
Yeah, exactly. Young father, but old person. This is what I am. Tired. And also today is the day. Yeah, tell me. No, we just have to celebrate winter solstice, which just happened. So now we're going to brighter times.
This is so great.
Because in Sweden, the sun rises at 8:30 and sets at 3. So it's quite like the day is practically almost over. It's 12 o'clock right now. There's 3 more hours of daylight. Then that's it. So it's a bit.
So it's like, wow. So and at what time will like there be like how long will it take before there's like at least like even amount of light and dark in the day?
I think that's in March somewhere.
It goes quite quickly, at one point.
Well, maybe it's not. I think it's in March. Isn't that like the equinox? Equinox 2025. Oh no, 2024. Yeah, it's in March. It's on there will be when.
That's everywhere. That's everywhere
March
the same.
20th.
Only the extremes.
March
So it's
20th.
on every place on the planet. It's the same, except like the amplitude is different, right? The difference, the contrast.
No,
okay, I prepared
correct.
like 3 topics. Very topics good. I prepared. 2 are very nice, and 1 is like a bit grim. Oh well.
Okay.
Well, you can pick where to start, and I can talk about
nice
like
nice one.
Nice one. Okay. Now, yesterday I had did something that I did for a long time. It also made me realize that I might not be like super happy with the things that I currently do. Namely, I was behind the sewing machine all day, and I made like a little laptop sleeve. Very. I just felt like making something, and I had this old leather bag that I was using for years, and I didn't. It was like, it was broken. I completely ripped it apart, and I made like a little laptop sleeve. And what I found, what was so nice, I started I think at 11, and then all of a sudden, like clink, it was like 4:30. There was nobody in the house, which is also kind of rare. Also because my partner, she's working from home most of the time, so I'm hardly ever at home. But then the whole day was gone. And I realized that this kind of feeling was something that I used to have often in my practice, and it hardly ever happens these days. And I think it has to do with somehow that the evolvement of my practice became more and more about like intellectualizing or talking with other people, making things like maybe also unnecessary complex, and then this exercise is just doing something with your hands and not like being disturbed, not like I also my phone somehow I forgot about my phone, and it was just a wonderful day. 2 questions: is this something that you encounter in your practice, and is that also sometimes not behind the screen? If so,
I think similar to you. It's been a long time since I had this properly. There used to be it's the classic like flow state when you're writing code or working on something really specific. I think the more specific the thing you're working on, the more likely you are to enter this stage, because it's okay. So you have this piece you have to make. You just like you just go into it, and it's magical. And I think actually, in a way, like if one can tune one's artistic practice for that, as much as possible, is the most enjoyable state to be in, like the state of flow. There are some tricks to encourage this, because in order to enter, because I looked into this a lot over the years, because it's such a magical thing. There are some tricks. So if you're in front of the computer, you need to spend like 15 to 20 minutes on one thing only, which sounds trivial, but it's really not. Like you have to spend 20 minutes doing one thing, not check your email, not go and check your phone, not do this, not answer message, nothing, just the one thing. And then it's likely that you enter this stage that it's like, okay, pure concentration, everything just like makes sense. But if you cannot concentrate for 15 to 20 minutes on one thing, it will never happen. Like that's like that's the benchmark. Like that's what you have to sort of, that's the basic structure. And I think when you are then removed, like computers, it's difficult on a computer to do this, because there are so many hurdles and obstacles, distractions. So, but then when you're sitting working with your hands on something very specific, then it's much more likely to happen, because you are naturally removed from these typical distractions.
It's kind of possible that because of TikTok or social media, general screen addictions, that younger generations might not ever encounter it in their whole lives. That's kind of like, now it turns to very sad, but I think it's kind of likely that there's like people like that are like in their maybe mid-10s that never experienced something like that.
Yeah, I was talking to a friend of mine the other week, but we were reminiscing about Fight Club, which was interesting. We should talk about Fight Club, because I think separate story next.
Rule number one: don't talk about Fight Club.
Exactly. But he's been teaching. He was teaching your son at the film school in Denmark, but he's now teaching other places. So he's teaching students, like film students. And he was talking about his understanding of Gen Z, and how in his like experience teaching like kids who are 20, around 20, that they are terrified of social interactions in general.
Yeah, they don't call anymore.
I mean, no, they don't even look. They can't look him in his eyes when they're talking. And anytime he pushes them a little bit for proper social, proper connection, something, either they break down sobbing or they just go hysterically laughing. So this was the two outcomes, and it was like for all students. And it was like, and here's this observation that is like, okay, so because you've been brought up in this social context where you don't really do socialness is not the same anymore, like when it's augmented by phones and social media, that you are not capable, and like they are not capable. The caveat to this is, one, it should be said that this man, he's a pretty intense person, so he might have this reaction on many people, because he demands like actual attention, and it demands something real, not something hiding behind this like layers and stuff. So maybe it's
sounds like a super good teacher. What's his name?
I will maintain his privacy for now. I can tell you later.
I would like to check with Gerardus how he experienced him. But it's somebody who you admire, and that's a quality, I would say. But I understand. It sounds like a good teacher, though, like a good art teacher. Especially
I think so. Yeah. And it would feel like that. But so in a way, it's possible. I don't know if it's correlated though. I mean, I remember this from being a teenager, that I would very often get into this flow state doing math homework, because it's a very particular task specific space. And when you are challenged a little bit, I mean, it was like I had this really fortunate position that math was super easy for me. But then I still practiced, because you have to practice in order to like fine tune this craft, whatever it is, solving problems. So then I would just solve problems for hours. And then it's just like super relaxing, because it's like a complete perfect feedback system, because you know instantly if what you did was correct. So then you can just deliberately practice and learn really quickly. And I would very often go into those flow states
That
because
is
it's
so nice.
super task specific.
Okay, there's so many things now I think of. One thing is my interaction with Kato, like earlier this week. She's also like, actually, she's somebody who naturally is kind of good with maths, but she's somehow finds it also very problematic or difficult to get in a focus state. And although she has HDAD, which often people, yeah, sometimes for some of those people it's easy to really get into this hyper focus, right? It's like these two worlds,
Yeah,
like, or not completely
true.
unfocused, or you're like super hyper focused.
Yeah,
And
true.
then she's good at math, and then like she had like her examination. This is her last year. She's about to move
Yeah.
to a next school, but we'll talk about that later also. But and then she was doing her preparation for the math class, and she said, "No, yeah, I've been doing all my homework for, so I'm like kind of confident. I'll just do like a few exams now. I'm kind of confident." And then like later in the day, in the preparation day, it was the day before the exam. She came downstairs,
Mm.
completely red cheeks, and said, "I like this so much. I fully understand it. I like it so much." But then that was a bit like alarming to me, because that is something that is, she says, "Now I fully understand it. I really like it." And,
Mm.
but that was the first time in basically the whole year that I felt that she was actually engaged, that she really did it. She really worked it through. She was in this flow state
Mm.
in math. And that was a bit alarming, and it also resulted in a very bad mark, because she didn't have
Mm.
enough routine. She
Mm.
understood it. She had like experienced the success, or the let's say the core of the math, but she didn't have
Mm.
like these hours of driving that you need to be a good driver.
It's the
Wow.
classic, like
Yeah.
when you are too confident and then
Yeah.
you get hit with the reality of like
Yeah. Yeah.
solving this.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, one can
Yeah.
really question the usefulness of like high school math, but I think it's like as with everything high school, it's not even so much about learning particular things; it's just about learning how to learn.
To learn.
So
Yeah.
from that point of view, it's really practical, I guess.
Yeah. Now, and then there was this other thought that I just had. Like, it's funny that we mentioned like both the flow state as something that
Mm.
might be like going away because of like screen time, social media, blah blah blah. And on the other hand, this being social. So it's
Mm.
actually, which one is like very much about connection and being in interaction and being like being able to connect with people, which is like, no,
Mm.
you could say it's like on a very opposite end of like states of consciousness,
Mm.
like being social, being super interactive or engaged with,
Mm.
and so you could argue that this problem is not like only like, it's basically just pushing away both of these
Mm-hmm.
states.
Yeah, everybody becoming like isolated individuals somehow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Okay. This
But
was
flow
this was
state is
super.
magical. I mean, it's like
Yeah.
really such a wonderful thing to experience. When you have the pure concentration, everything just works, makes sense. It's like
Yeah.
it's such a nice thing. And that's somehow anytime you work on something specific enough that captures your attention enough, that's it. Like it's
Yeah. You know
but
what
it's
was also
just
funny? Yeah. I had like during this work, I also had like this meta view on myself a bit, like, because it's like being in the sewing machine, like making something handicraft. And I was also listening to the Beatles on the record, like
yeah.
on the vinyl. So I had also this weird sort of nostalgic, romantic view. It was like outside was like windy and everything. Nobody was there. But I also was a bit of judgmental of that. Somehow I'm not, and somehow I don't know why, but it feels a bit like cheating to me, as
Mm.
something not necessarily the right thing to do. And I don't know why. Yeah, maybe that's it. But it is actually super real, because I just made something and I
Yeah.
was like super, yeah, in this
It's
flow
too
state where
nice
I hardly,
basically. Yeah.
basically,
It's
probably it's like,
it's like that's why. Yeah. It's too nice. You're having too much. It's like too relaxing. It's really nice. So I mean, it's also honestly like especially when I have practices that are so based on working with computers. Anytime you do something with your hands, like craft related, sewing or wood
mm,
carving or like doing anything like that, it's super nice. even soldering things, like soldering, putting together
Super
things,
nice.
is also
Yeah.
like, it's so nice. So actually one should try and do that as much as possible as part of one's practice, because it's really
Yeah.
very satisfying. It's
Do you
really
think that
incredible.
like installing an old computer, reinstalling it and like wiping the hard drive and like installing all this thing is like something, is that close to that, or is it something entirely different?
Yeah, it's similar. It's a perfect segue to what happened last week when my root server crashed,
Yeah.
which I messaged to. I can talk about this because then
Yeah.
I had to restore it. So
Yeah.
it's a server on Hetzner. Previous to this, I had like multiple virtual private servers, like 4 DigitalOcean instances and like 4 Linode
Mm-hmm.
servers. Every time I made a new project, I just made a new server, but that's like 10 to 20 euros a month. And then
Mm-hmm.
I had like 8 of them. I was like, okay, this is not sustainable. So a couple of years ago, maybe 2 years ago, I got one server, like a root server, which is his own little computer in a
Mm-hmm.
data center in Finland,
Yeah.
and it's
Located in
much
Europe,
cheaper.
physically located.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a physical box. And then I
Yeah.
moved, after painstaking many hours, I moved everything to this server. So then all of my websites are on one location, which is not so clever in terms of like operational security and distribution of content and stuff, but it's much cheaper.
You don't have
Uh,
like any like Cloudflare in front of it or anything.
No, nothing like that. Nah,
Okay.
it's just a server. I mean, I have a couple of extra other ones, which for other things, but they don't count. But then Friday last week, it just stopped working, and then I realized, oh shit, my last backup of this server was like at least 2 years old and somewhere inaccessible on a hard drive somewhere that I don't know. So I was
Mm-hmm.
like, okay, that's not good, because that's like everything that is my whole online artistic practice, essentially.
And is
Uh,
this is this a backup server, or is this actually your running project? So
no, that's
new
like the
projects.
actual, yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
everything, like the Jonas Lund
But
website, the
yeah, yeah.
all everything, all the
And these are
databases
not
also not
these are
backed
not
up.
static.
Like,
Yeah, these are not static sites either. There's also like let's
no,
say
yeah,
contributions of other people included, or
yeah,
like iterations you made
totally,
yourself that was
yeah,
all lost.
yeah. Completely,
Mm.
complete. I mean, it was
Mm.
offline, and then because it's a physical server, there is no like rescue system. You know, like if you have a
No.
virtual private server, you can always like log into it via some console, whatever. But
Mm.
this case, it's a physical server and it's not working. So then
Yeah,
it's
so
like,
there's
okay,
basically like a machine
yeah,
somewhere
yeah,
in Finland
yeah,
in a rack with a
yeah,
on and off switch with a hard drive
yeah,
that's actually moving probably.
exactly,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That's it. And then through their
One question in
interface,
between,
yeah,
like
yeah, tell me.
your repositories and your code was not part of that, right? You stored it separate. That's on GitHub or somewhere.
No, all my Git repos are there too.
Okay.
They're also there. Yeah.
So also you lost like all your you could not even like the scenario of like, okay, then I'll start a recompile or
I mean, I have them locally somewhere, but
yeah,
not
yeah, oh yeah.
everything and not
Hmm.
fully up to date. There's very poor data management from the
Yeah,
Jonas
yeah,
Lund
yeah.
studios.
Yeah,
So,
very like unexpected.
uh,
Also, I always see you as like one
yeah,
of the most like
yeah,
OPSEC
yeah. It's embarrassing,
guys.
embarrassing. I managed to get it back
Ah,
through the Headsnare UI interface. They have some buttons. They have an interface where you can press the power button and you can long press the power button. And when you
mm-hmm,
long press the power button, that's basically like you have your computer and you just hold the button to force a restart.
mm-hmm.
So you do that. And sometimes these servers take like up to half hour to reboot because there's so much data and they have to do like the partition checks.
Hey, do you know whether this is actual like a real button that somebody pushes then, or is that like mechanically, or is it like a sort of
Uh,
like a
it's
separate
automated.
circuit?
I mean, it's
Yeah.
automated. So I guess they just simulate it somehow. But because the nuclear option in this UI interface is that you can ask a technician to go to the server and press the actual button in case
Mm.
everything else doesn't
Okay.
work. So then they create a ticket and you have to pay for it. It's like $10 or something. And then a dude in Finland will just take his clipboard and walk to the server and press the button, which is
Wow.
really funny to imagine. But I was
Yeah.
very lucky because it came back once it was long pressed. And then I spent the following hours setting up a proper backup system. So now it's being backed up once a day to another server.
With
And
what
that
kind of
was like a
service?
flow state. That was a flow state because then I was spending like 2 hours just setting up the backup system. So that was nice. Yeah.
Wow.
Good
And is that
times.
like with some cloud? Is that like a Backblaze, or how do you do that?
It's I got a storage box from Hetzner, which is
Okay.
like a separate server, but only for storage of like
Yeah.
5 terabytes. And then it's using something called Borg, BORG backup, which is essentially just like rsync, rclone, but the wrapper around it. It creates like a encrypted backup server. I can check the logs now to see if it's still running fine. Yeah, it's running fine. So then it does that, and that's it. Yeah.
Nice. So that's then like a flow state, computer code, like being on this, like have this very specific task, very
Exactly.
clear. It's also not there's like you don't need any. I think that's the other thing also maybe like if there's like the feeling that you produce something that somehow is going to be seen or validated by other people, it's hard to get into a flow state. That's what I don't know if this is true, but this is something I felt that could be because like this, it was completely unnecessary to build this laptop. It was not something I needed. So I never sort of. I cannot. There's no necessity to step back and to say, okay, what does it mean, or what do I want to communicate with this, or what's the It's just that thing. And I think it's the same thing with your. There's nobody's going to look at that work in the end. There's nobody, maybe except for me. Then, like we talk about it now, but there was not like an audience in mind at all.
That's true. But yeah, I mean, that's true. It's only for my own indulgence. Like it's work, essentially. It's just like get it to work. But I think in general, like for me, like I very much enjoy doing this type of that type of computer work, which is like either you like, let's say you downloaded 100 videos and you want to extract all the frames and then do something and then combine them together and you write some shell script and then you just automate stuff. That's like incredibly satisfying to do this.
I can.
So it's similar, like you just do like, okay, I'm gonna stack this script on this script on this script, and then all of a sudden it's like voila, now it just works. Well, it's really nice. But I mean, it's true. Maybe it's true that the further removed you are from its like end destination or the placement of the work you're working on, the more free you are to just indulge in the process. I haven't had that experience for such a long time, so I don't know. Like making stuff without anything in mind.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, but maybe the question is like, do you often while you're working professionally that you really get into a flow state?
At times, but not so much, not as much as I would like. It's very hard to reach that stage when programming because it's just like because it's so much back and forth. I think that's the main reason. Because you do something and then you check it in the browser and then you go there and you go there and you go there and you go there and you go this and you look up that and you do that and you do that. And then there's like the flow state is really like, okay, if you sit in front of your text editor and you just write code, like, but that is so rare that you're in that spot. Like, especially now, because now I just program with Cursor AI and it's like much easier. And it's like
you hardly write. It's prompt editing now, right?
partial prompting. Yeah, it's difficult. I don't know. I'm gonna try. I mean, what I do usually in Sweden is I carve wood. I make like butter knives and stuff like that, which is very similar to this like super relaxing thing. You just like, and you have to pay attention because otherwise you cut your fingers and it hurts a lot. So you just like make some butter knives.
Nice.
Really nice. Yeah.
Great.
I have to segue to go you first.
No,
okay,
no,
you first.
I have two topics.
Yeah.
One is like a heavy topic, and the other thing is like a sort of just like a tiny funny observation, which is slightly related to our. The one thing is about naming children.
Yeah.
Do you have any thought?
Name children.
I was listening to another person's podcast, and there somebody was like talking about like he met somebody, and her name was he was in his 40s also. Her name was Lasagna, and and it made me think. And then the story of this was that the parents, when they were like young, they went to Italy,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
they had this dish which was like not so known in Europe at the time. So she's probably older, a bit older, and
Mm-hmm.
she just thought it was such a nice dish, and she thought it was such a nice name. They called their child Lasagna. And then, of
Yeah.
course, like now she's called Sanya because, but
Yeah.
on her passport still is Lasagna. And then I thought it made me think about like children naming. That is such an act of like vulnerability, or so there's like people who give their children very original names or very like
Mm-hmm.
specific, or they come up with their own names.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's people who somehow they go in like a naming tradition of their family, or like a cultural naming tradition. And
Mm-hmm.
it is a bit like a tattoo. I thought it made me think about that it's a bit like giving a tattoo, because it's so much saying about like the person who gives this name, and about that moment in time, how you think about like what this, because it's so impactful and it will never change. And it often says so much about like the ambition or the ideas about the parents. Um, and I
Mm-hmm.
thought, yeah, it's funny. I just okay, maybe the question is also, like, we gave our children, my wife has a very specific kind of strange name, and our children also have kind of strange names, but they are, and I was thinking, what does it say about us, like us not, them not giving like an like a Simon or an Jonas or a Roel, our parents, I think, in the 70s were really 80s, were giving really names that are somehow traditional names, or like known names. And I think contemporary parents often give their children names like weird names, like
That's
Storm
true. I
or
remember the story of like when people started naming their kid after the female lead in Game of Thrones, wherever her name is, Calaris. And then and then everybody's like,
Daenerys.
Daenerys
Yeah,
Targaryen.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
Daenerys. And then because it's super cute, and until she turns out to be the most horrible character in all of Game of Thrones, and then it's
yeah.
like that's what you're named after. Yes, it's like I think it's also like, I mean, for sure it gets accelerated in our connected world. Like the need to uh,
Being
the ego
original.
of the parents need to be special, like where you don't want to belong into a tradition, then you just pick names that are random, you come up with new names and stuff like that. But I think I mean, it's a very personal thing. Like the
Mm-hmm.
naming is like a very personal thing, and everybody's going to have opinions about your name in the
Yeah,
first year of your life. After that,
yeah.
people don't care. Like after
No,
that, it's just your name. So then
yeah,
it's like, it's also, yes, there's a lot of weight to it, but how important is it really? Because even if it is a name that is like average, after like a year of having a child with that name, that's the child's name. Like that's who they are. So it's like, it also becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy in a way. Like
mm-hmm.
it's just like, okay. And it's difficult. A friend of mine is making tons of cash having a Tinder app for name picking for expecting parents. So you
Yeah.
just swipe left and right until you find like names.
The
Yeah,
name.
yeah,
And
yeah.
is it connected to a large
So
language model as well, somehow, or some AI?
I don't think so anymore, but I'm not sure. It's older.
Yeah.
Sorry. Oh. Mm. I don't
But I
know.
think there's also something about,
Oh,
like, it says something if as a parent you want to give like a very original name, versus you give like a very traditional name. Yeah.
yeah.
Wow.
It's true. Like in our case, we didn't know the gender of the child, so we had to first get to know the kid before we came up with a name. So our child was unnamed for quite a long time
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
until well, which I think is fair because you need to understand the personality for it to be a good name.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
And
I
did you
think,
think you managed to somehow like put that, like the personality of your child
yeah,
into the name?
completely. Yeah. The question is like, how much does your name determine your personality
Yeah.
later on in life?
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm
Mm-hmm.
sure that's also a thing where, similar to astrology, like you project the astrology sign that you have, although it's total nonsense. Like there is nothing that actually says that these personality traits that are ascribed to like whatever a Gemini or a Capricorn actually makes any difference. But
I think
then
it has a
becomes
huge impact.
it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy because you are told you are like that, and then you become like that. No?
No,
Yeah.
totally.
Yeah. So it has an impact, but then it's nonsense. I'm not sure. Yeah, it's nice.
Okay.
Hey, okay. I'm gonna segue because this was a conversation
Fight
I had
Club.
the other week about Fight Club. Yeah, because we're talking about Fight Club, and then we realized that, like, I was talking to a friend, and we both realized that Fight Club had like a really big impact on our lives, like in our teens when we watched Fight Club, and we're like, wow, it's like counterculture, strangeness, and then like so many memorable quotes of like anti-consumerism, whatever. And then we're talking about, okay, so has this film aged or not? And because it kind of fell off the radar, like it was a flop in the cinema and then became a cult classic, and then nobody talks about Fight Club anymore. Like it doesn't exist much. And
Did
our
you
theory
rewatch?
for this, not yet, but I will rewatch soon. And the theory is that the men that it represents, like at the time, it's like disenfranchised, like kind of incels of the time. The men that they represent nowadays is like the proper alt-right, like Trump, Musk, cycles. So it's like, I think now, as seen from this lens, it becomes a very problematic film. And you want to blow up the financial institutions as a sort of resetting everyone back to zero. And it's like a super troubled man who has a split personality disorder because he cannot deal with the dreary life of corporate America. So he like reinvents a cool version of himself. But these guys, like, that's like in the line of Jordan Peterson, Andrew Tate, Elon Musk, Trump, whatever. It's the same energy. So I'm wondering if Scene today is a very different watch than what it was 30 years ago. Because 30 years ago, as a man, you'd be like, okay, you can like relate to the fact that there is no like space for young men to express their emotions or feelings or to be vulnerable or to be anything but like what is expected of you to be. So I don't know. What's your thoughts?
No, I totally see. I think also the masculinity that is like sort of celebrated in that film in a very specific way is like something that is not so. That's very rare. It's also a very complicated topic these days for young. Yeah, so that's not a topic of like contemporary cinema too much.
No,
and
not
then
much.
and then the other thing I think is very, but it's basically what you're saying also. I think the domain of like anarchists, like super left anarchists, anti-capitalism position, which still I think in Holland there is like the punk, like post-punk kind of, no, not post-punk. I would say really like the anarchist alternative movement. They still have like lots of attributes of that. But they have as a goal a sort of social community. So they want to sort of disrupt financial systems because I think it's not about like sort of a social cohesive society. It's not after social cohesive as where alt-right I think is. But I don't know actually. I think they also have this idea that because should all as a society benefit from like having. So it's very vague how these things. But I think especially Andrew Tate and Peterson, they're really about like the ego, the macho, the male dominance. So that's very very much not like a social agenda at all. But I think lots of alt-right, they still come from this position of it's not only about myself. They want also they have like very leftist things in them as well about like being autonomous, trying to don't accept the system as it is because the system is exploiting them, and we need to find like another system that is like more social. I mean, it's the same kind of words, different direction. It's very funny. I would like to rewatch Fight Club.
Yeah, we should rewatch it for next episode, and then we can do a close reading on the classic because it's such a classic. I mean, I'm really curious how it aged, really, because it's that image of that like young man has changed quite a lot. And I think if there's anybody in like the society that is struggling proper right now, it's the young white man. I like young men in general. And there was this page during the U.S. presidential election on the Democrats' website, like this is who we serve, and it's like a long list of all the different communities that the Democrats are for, and nowhere were there like young men on this page. Nowhere, like not a single mention of like young men. Everybody else, but that. So I guess it's also like a. And they are like scary young men, because when they don't get a place to belong, they do fucked up shit.
Yeah.
So it's like they need support.
Yeah, I think also that like, will kick back somehow. It is already in the form of Oscar Peterson and Andrew Tate. And
radicalized by the TikTok and YouTube algorithms.
No, totally. Like yesterday, I was talking about this. Like they did the shadow election during the last presidential election, also in Holland. And then also because of TikTok, for young men, the Forum for Democracy, like the extreme right party in Holland, was like but among young men was the most successful, by far the most successful party. And that's just like in this pretty like nuanced Holland, where everything there's like lots of examples of the benefits of a social system. Very clear.
Strange, huh?
Yeah. But I think that's TikTok, and it's also they share these things for fun. I was like also witnessing this, like these quotes of Andrew Tate, or that they somehow they are perceived as funny, and therefore they share it, and then everybody sort of also feels like, if you, it's a bit like the Bang Up, it's just like the Bang Up Boys, you know. You just give somebody this, you share this music because you think it's funny, but then it's kind of sort of very bad music, but you just think it's funny. But then somehow you get conditioned with that kind of sort of. If you do that all the time, somehow that all you become this. I don't know. Yeah.
It's possible. I mean, it's also like one cannot underestimate the need for just like memeing. So then it's just like for the lols, and then in the end, exactly. Like if your future prospects is anyways zero, like what does it matter if you get somebody who's exactly. Like promising to destroy everything? You know? Yeah. It's like some accelerationism kind of destruction, just make it like go away and something. I
think that is a very different
makes
perspective.
Sense. Yeah. It's like, because it's also like, what's your future prospects anyways? Like markets are fucked, like the climate is fucked. Like the economy is fucked. Everything's fucked for you.
Okay. This is a nice segue to the last and very depressing.
Okay, let's end
okay. No, we'll find something way up again. But no. So our former president Rutte, you might know him. He's now the director president of the NAVO, right? And he was like his maiden speech, where he sort of introduced himself to the whatever, the world as a whole, as a NATO or the NATO. It was a very grim speech. I don't know if you saw it, but it's really about like the war already started. You think might think it's something happening somewhere. It's already happening in front of our doors, inside our servers. It was really grim, and it had like a high impact on my children because they see these things, they get quotes, and also the kids' journals. Like everybody was talking about it for a while. Also because he's our president, and they were for more than 10 years, so they also know his face. They also know. So that was kind of it was not this abstract guy dude talking about these things. It was like just our former president who was saying these things. And so that was kind of, I find it difficult to deal with that kind of messaging because it was like so heavy. On the other hand, you can also argue like we have been growing up in in a reality where somehow war was so far away, and that might not be the case anymore so much as it is now. Apparently it isn't. At the same time, I also felt, okay, so, and then what kind of impact does this have? How do children and then my Cateau that people might know from the always like ad hoc improvised audio recording in our outro, is she's getting 18 and she is thinking what to do next. And then she was like, she really likes singing, and she's also kind of so she was visiting the conservatory, and that was in the same week as the speech was. And then she said, like, maybe, you know what, I'm not going to do any artistic thing. I'm just going to go into care, because if the war starts, I can at least like be helpful. And it was such a sweet, but also I find it so heavy. And then I really don't know how to respond to that. Also because I find it myself also not the easiest thing to somehow find a clear position in this whole like North changing geopolitical dynamics situation. Then thinking about it a little bit longer, then I think like, hey, I feel that this president of us never really had like a vision. He was always like very pragmatic. He was always like very much like dealing with the things that are ahead of him. He was actually famous for not having a vision. And then all of a sudden this grim vision, I felt it was very much like sort of whispered in. It was not his own idea at all, although that doesn't really matter at all. And I think, okay, these Russians, they're not going to be in the, they're already fighting for 200 kilometers for let's say the last 3 years. So it's not like they will like be here in our front yard so soon. But you know how I find it difficult as a parent to sort of navigate that kind of thing, especially because I felt it had immediate impact on the decisions of how to continue study. And then somehow they already won, right? If we already give up, I mean, that's very dramatic, like hard, like heavy course. But if they already sort of like the art already lost, if somebody is not doing that, yeah, then we already are not free anymore, right? Then.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's useful in these moments, like especially in like that. Why now he would do such a speech, like, and then if one works out the moving parts at the moment is okay. So you have Donald Trump who's going to go into office in a couple of weeks, and Donald Trump is famously not supportive of like sending endless amounts of money to Ukraine to fight against Russia, and he's promised to end the war in the first week of his office. And I think, in a way, if like there's any sort of silver lining when it comes to Donald Trump for all his shortcomings and idiot policies and Project 2025, whatever, is that he is the only one in the last years of U.S. presidents who's actually reduced U.S. presence on the global stage. Like he pulled out of Afghanistan, and then he's like, but why are we there? Like asking these questions, which the Democrats never ask, because it's like, no, but we are like the world police. So let's keep on destroying all the other democracies around the world. And I think it's likely that Trump will manage to end this conflict between Russia and Ukraine, because he will just go to this table and say, well, listen, Ukraine, this is the deal. Either you accept it or you get no more support from us. And then they have no chance. And then the war just ends. And then that's it. So then the reason why Rutte would say something like this in NATO is exactly because of that. Because Trump will pull out all the support for Ukraine. And then the NATO, the remainders of NATO has to then continue to support Ukraine.
Yeah.
And then it becomes very complicated.
But I think
like, as my feeling is that, but time will tell to see what happens in a couple of weeks. And then, it's depressing for sure.
It's depressing, right?
Depressing. What is it like?
It also
in the
felt
Netherlands?
like, I think,
Is there a draft?
Draft?
Is there a current general draft? Do you have to go to do the military service?
No.
In the Netherlands?
Okay. No, but they're also talking about that. But they're also saying we have to like make sure we have cash. He was saying like we have to have cash in the house, and we have to have water for at least a week or a few days.
Oh, like
that
this.
kind of stuff. And that is like so much. I think it's so much about sort of. I think it's not really about that message. It's really about escalating and creating urgency, and also somehow validating like the next step to the NATO budget has to go up. It's basically basically building up that, and that's also I was like happy to somehow announce that, but that, at the same time, like a war is always starting with. As it also always starts because of like sort of gradual escalation, like somebody does this, then the next one does that, and then the next one does that, and this is like just an escalation step. For that matter, I also thought somehow, like just what you said, like about Trump, that he sort of pulled out of Afghanistan with the words also like. I find it so funny that he was so brutally honest also about the oil. He said the oil is ours. The oil is ours. We have the oil. And then I think if you compare that with like let's some democratic rhetoric that would say, yeah, we sort of will reinstall a democratic power, and we will just that is so. I think that is so. I find that so hypocrite because Trump is then actually super honest about, okay, we are here for the oil, we have the oil, and we can go. We'll make sure that is secured. And that, and it's so brutally honest, but it's not like fundamentally different of like the intentions of like destabilizing the middle or that region because of the oil, because you have a position for negotiation. So, yeah, okay. But there I also felt like the same kind of like, yeah.
I mean, yeah, it's sad if your daughter wanted to go into music and the conservatory and then decides, no, but actually it makes more sense to go into care. But I think my feeling is that it's like my feeling is that she's falling for the fear tactics.
Yeah.
And one has to refuse the dominant narrative of increasing fear to justify increased military spendings, to justify all these like strange decisions that they want, right? So then the way to fight against it is to refuse the fear.
Hey, Jonas, that is such great words. I think this is the end of this podcast. I think. Can you repeat this one more time? Can you repeat this one more time? Like in it, like I think this is the end, and then I'll play like after that. When you did that, I will just say goodbye. I will just play like a song from Kato, which is a song that I don't know, but she heard this song. It was part of her upbringing. Somehow it was like these songs that I never played because I hated it. But I think it's kind of nice. So if you now, if you now talk to her or like,
and say like, don't be scared. It's okay. Yeah, go do whatever you want. Life's too short, anyways. I would say. De wijzers draaien om, ik voel verder naar het volgende uur. De dag gaat sneller dan ik wil. Ik zou willen dat de tijd bevroor. En dat ik eeuwig klein kan blijven, niet groter wordt. In mijn droom ik dat ik dat kan. Tik-tak, tik, de tijd gaat veel te snel voor mij. Ik moet nog sporten, dansen, zingen, maar de dag is al voorbij. Tik-tak, tik, ik wil echt zoveel tegelijk. Ik ren mijn benen uit mijn lijf, maar ondertussen vind ik maar geen tijd, geen tijd. Tik-tak, 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 tik. Tik-tak, tik-tak, tik.